Hello. Okay, so we are going to read Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 1. And this is a pretty short scene. It does have Hamlet's famous soliloquy in it, so we'll see that. What happens in this scene? So after Rosencrantz and Guildenstern report their failure to find out the cause of Hamlet's madness, why he's so sad, all that stuff, Polonius places Ophelius where he and Claudius may secretly observe a meeting between her and Hamlet. So they're using Ophelia to try to figure out what's going on with Hamlet. Hamlet is at first courteous to Ophelia, but suddenly he turns on her. He denies having loved her. He asks where her father is. He attacks womankind, we'll be talking about that, and tells her she should enter a nunnery. Wow, Hamlet, harsh. After Hamlet exits, Claudius decides that Hamlet's erratic behavior is not caused by love and announces a plan to send Hamlet on an embassy to England. Polonius persuades Claudius to take no action until Gertrude talks with Hamlet after the play, which is scheduled for the evening. Okay, so this is Act 3, Scene 1. And we're going to go ahead and listen to this.
And can you by no drift of conference get from him why he puts on this confusion, grading so harshly all his days of quiet with turbulent and dangerous lunacy? He does confess he feels himself distracted, but from what cause he will by no means speak.
Nor do we find him forward to be sounded, but with a crafty madness keeps aloof when we would bring him on to some confession of his true state.
Did he receive you well?
Most like a gentleman.
But with much forcing of his disposition.
Niggard of question, but of our demands most free in his reply.
Did you essay him to any pastime?
Madam, it so fell out that certain players we o'erwrought on the way. Of these we told him, and there did seem in him a kind of joy to hear of it. They are here about the court, and, as I think, they have already ordered this night to play before him.
"'Tis most true, and he beseeched me to entreat your majesties to hear and see the matter."
With all my heart, and it doth much content me to hear him so inclined. Good gentlemen, give him a further edge and drive his purpose into these delights. We shall, my lord. Sweet Gertrude, leave us too, for we have closely sent for Hamlet hither, that he, as 'twere by accident, may here affront Ophelia. Her father and myself, lawful espials, will so bestow ourselves that, seeing unseen, we may of their encounter frankly judge, and gather by him, as he is behaved, if it be the affliction of his love or no that thus he suffers for.
I shall obey you. And for your part, Ophelia, I do wish that your good beauties be the happy cause of Hamlet's wildness. So shall I hope your virtues will bring him to his wonted way again, to both your honors.
Madam, I wish it may.
Okay, so they asked Guildenstern and Rosencrantz if they knew what was up with Hamlet. They really can't get to the bottom of it. He somehow managed to not tell them what's been making him so crazy, because he knows that they're spies, you idiots. So, of course, they don't actually have any answers. So the king says, well, we've figured out we're going to have Ophelia here waiting for him. We're going to see a conversation. We're going to spy on them in a conversation, and we're going to get to the bottom of this. And he says, Gertrude, you need to leave. Like, leave the spying to the menfolk. You know, you're just a little woman. Probably go, like, knit or something.
Ophelia, walk you here. Gracious, so please you, we will bestow ourselves. Read on this book. That show of such an exercise may color your loneliness. We are oft to blame in this, 'tis too much proved, that with devotion's visage and pious action we do sugar o'er the devil himself.
Oh, 'tis too true. How smart a lash that speech doth give my conscience. The harlot's cheek, beautied with plastering art, is not more ugly to the thing that helps it than is my deed to my most painted word. Oh, heavy burden.
I hear him coming. Let's withdraw, my lord.
Okay, so they've gone to some place where they can listen to what's going on. Ophelia is somewhere nearby. Hamlet does not see her right away. She has a book in her hand. She's supposed to be acting like she's reading. Hamlet is going to come in. This is his famous soliloquy. We're going to get all the way through this, and then we're going to talk about it, because it's pretty profound, okay? He says a lot of really, really important information in this soliloquy.
To be
'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. To die, to sleep, no more. And by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the presser's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin? Who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death? The undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all. And thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought. And enterprises of great pitch and moment with this regard their currents turn awry, and lose the name of action.
Okay, that's where we're going to pause it. I want to talk about this soliloquy. Okay, so the next few things he says are about him seeing Ophelia coming in. Okay, so he starts out, and I think a lot of people know, like, this entire to be or not to be situation, it's about suicide. So he's analyzing, do I live? Do I take my life? What is the best route for me to take at this point in my life? Okay, so he says, to be or not to be, that is the question, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them. So which is nobler, to go ahead and fight with what this life flings at you, or to end your troubles? That's his basic question. To die, to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. So this idea of ending his heartache, remember his father is dead, his uncle killed him, he thinks his mother may have had something to do with it. He has a lot of heartache right now. He's not sure he wants to go on. He's not sure that there's any reason for him to actually continue. He says, to die, to sleep perchance to dream. Ah, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. So he's thinking about this whole, like, what happens after you die? We don't know. But what if, what if it's not great? What if it's worse? What if you end up doing something that you're not supposed to, like suicide, and then that ends up sending you to a bad place with perhaps, like, fire and brimstone and things like that? All part of his thought here. By the way, that idea of shuffling off this mortal coil, famous line that means dying. What dreams may come. This entire speech, this entire soliloquy has a lot of very famous parts. Many of the lines will ring with familiarity, which is completely expected. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin. So why do we suffer all of these terrible things in life whenever we can kind of put ourselves out of our own misery quickly and easily? Why do we stick around? Who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country, from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Really, it's fear of what we don't know. Nobody comes back from death. Whenever you die, that's a mortal thing. Like, you are done. You do not come back to explain how it was. When you die, you die. So because we don't have anybody telling us what it was like and how it went and what came next, we're a bit concerned. We're a bit concerned to just kind of put ourselves out of our own misery. Even a terrible life here, it's still life, right? So all of that is part of what he's measuring right now. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought and enterprises of great pitch and moment. With this regard, their currents turn awry and lose the name of action. So we're all kind of hastened to inaction because of our fear of what comes next after death. Death is the one thing, we are all destined to get there. From the day we're born, that's what we're heading toward. But it's the one thing we don't necessarily run toward. We actually go a bit slowly, right? Because we don't know what's next. So he's analyzing all of this. This is a pretty deep, a bit of a dark soliloquy. This is him talking to himself. Now, some people like to argue, oh, well, he's not really, like, he's okay. Like, he's just putting on this show for everybody else. He's trying to look crazy. Hey, listen, he doesn't know anybody else is there. This is before he sees Ophelia. And Claudius and Polonius are both hidden. He thinks he's alone. This is where Hamlet's thoughts are when he thinks he's alone. So I think we're getting a reality of Hamlet here that we're not seeing in all of the scenes right now. So a lot of times he's performing some type of a role. He's playing a part of some kind. In this moment, we're seeing where Hamlet is. And that's a bit grim.
Soft you now. The fair Ophelia. Nymph, in thy orisons be all my sins remembered.
Good my lord, how does your honor for this many a day?
I humbly thank you. Well.
My lord, I have remembrances of yours that I have longed to redeliver. I pray you now receive them.
No, not I. I never gave you aught.
My honored lord, you know right well you did. And with them words of so sweet breath composed has made things more rich. Their perfume lost, take these again, for to the noble mind, rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind. There, my lord.
Are you honest?
My lord?
Are you fair?
What means your lordship?
That if you be honest and fair, your honesty should admit no discourse to your beauty.
Could beauty, my lord, have better commerce than with honesty?
Aye, truly. For the power of beauty will sooner transform honesty from what it is to a bawd than the force of honesty can translate beauty into his likeness. This was sometime a paradox, but now the time gives it proof. I did love you once.
Okay, so this conversation is starting to really shift. So it starts out, and Ophelia walks up, and she's telling him, like, hey, I have all these letters from you. I thought I'd give them back to you, these letters that you sent me. You don't seem to feel the same way about me, so I thought I'd return them. if we are remembering, she's been forbidden by her dad to really hang out with him much. So perhaps if she feels like his feelings have cooled, it's because she hasn't been around him at all. She hasn't been talking to him. She's been staying away. So I think that's a bit strange to talk about giving all of his letters back. Also, whenever you break up in a relationship, I'm not sure that it's really fruitful to start worrying about dividing up of everything. Like that's not necessarily, that's a bit of an angry conversation, and a lot of times it causes bitterness and hostility on one side or both. So this idea of her wanting to give his letters back to her, or back to him, like, I don't know, that seems a bit hurtful on her part. Well, he's responding, he's reacting, he's getting a bit ticked off, and we can sense it in his voice. It's raising. He just said, I did love you once. Let's see what he says next.
Indeed, my lord, you made me believe so.
You should not have believed me, for virtue cannot so inoculate our old stock, but we shall relish of it. I loved you not.
I was the more deceived.
He just told her that he did love her once. In the next line, he says, I loved you not. Again, when relationships are shifting or ending, and this doesn't have to be a relationship that's ending, but everything's very tempestuous in this story right now. Hamlet's a mess. Ophelia has been told by her brother and her father to stay away from him. Everything's a mess with their relationship. Maybe it had been going well before his dad died, his mom remarried, and his uncle may be the murderer. Before all of that, Ophelia and Hamlet were going along just fine, but now a lot of life has happened and he's not feeling the relationship so much. And it might have been good if she just kind of stuck around at a distance and was like, hey, Hamlet, I love you and I'll be here whenever you need me. But that is not what happened. And so he's ticked off. He's like, I loved you. Just kidding. No, I didn't. Right now, he just wants to hurt her because he has been hurt. If you've ever been in a relationship that broke up, probably this rings familiar. One thing I love about Shakespeare is how real and how true his words and his relationships are in these plays. Okay, let's keep going. Let's see what he suggests next. He's coming up with all sorts of just great things that he's saying.
Get thee to a nunnery. Why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? I am myself indifferent, honest, but yet I could accuse me of such things, that it were better my mother had not borne me. I am very proud, revengeful, ambitious, with more offenses at my beck than I have thoughts to put them in, imagination to give them shape, or time to act them in. What should such fellows as I do, crawling between earth and heaven? We are errant knaves, all. Believe none of us. Go thy ways to a nunnery. Where's your father?
At home, my lord?
Let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but in his own house. Farewell.
Oh, help him, you sweet heavens!
If thou dost marry, I'll give thee this plague for thy dowry. Be thou as chaste as ice, as pure as snow, thou shalt not escape calumny. Get thee to a nunnery. Farewell. Or, if thou wilt needs marry, marry a fool. For wise men know well enough what monsters you make of them. To a nunnery. Go, and quickly too. Farewell.
Heavenly powers, restore him!
I have heard of your paintings too well enough. God hath given you one face, and you make yourselves another. You jig and amble, and you lisp. You nickname God's creatures, and make your wantonness your ignorance. Go to! I'll no more on't. It hath made me mad. I say, we will have no more marriage. Those that are married already, all but one shall live. The rest shall keep as they are. To a nunnery. Go.
Okay, so that went poorly. So he tells her to get to a nunnery. He says, you don't want to be a breeder of sinners. At this point, he thinks all humanity are sinners. Every man and woman out there, they're all sinful creatures. Therefore, you don't want to be mother to a bunch of sinful creatures, so you should go to a nunnery so you never become a mother. Well, that's really great reasoning and logic, Hamlet. He also seems to have a lot of pent-up rage toward females, probably with good reason. Remember, he sees his mother, whom he, has loved and felt an allegiance toward until now. He feels like she somehow maybe has done his father wrong. Maybe she was a party to the murder. And so he thinks all women are bad. So he's really kind of completely triggered when he's talking to females in this play. He talked to his mother in Act 1. Now he's talking to Ophelia directly in Act 3, and it's going pretty poorly. He tells her, he's talking about himself. He's like, I am very proud, revengeful, ambitious, with more offenses at my beck than I have thoughts to put them in, imagination to give them shape, or time to act them in. What should such fellows as I do, crawling between earth and heaven? Why do you want to make more of us? Go to a nunnery. And basically he's saying all men are tricksters. You need to not trust any of them. Get to a nunnery. Don't marry. That's the decision you should make for yourself. That's the best thing you, Ophelia, somebody I once cared for, could do. And all of this is just deeply troubling to her. This is a man that she probably was falling in love with. Maybe she was in love with him. And he's telling her, there's no hope for us. Go to a nunnery. So all of this would be deeply disturbing to Ophelia.
Oh, what a noble mind is here o'erthrown. The courtiers, soldiers, scholars, eye, tongue, sword. The expectancy in rose of the fair state. The glass of fashion and the mold of form. The observed of all observers quite down. And I, of ladies most deject and wretched, that sucked the honey of his musicked vows, now see that noble and most sovereign reason, like sweet bells jangled out of time and harsh, that unmatched form and stature of blown youth, blasted with ecstasy. Oh,
Ecstasy means
woe is
insanity.
me, to have seen what I have seen. See what I see.
Love? His affections do not that way tend. Nor what he spake, though it lacked form a little, was not like madness. There's something in his soul, o'er which his melancholy sits on brood, and I do doubt the hatch and the disclose will be some danger, which for to prevent I have in quick determination thus set it down. He shall with speed to England for the demand of our neglected tribute. Haply the seas and countries different with variable objects shall expel this something settled matter in his heart, whereon his brain still beating puts him thus from fashion of himself. What think you on't?
It shall do well. But yet do I believe the origin and commencement of his grief sprung from neglected love. How now, Ophelia? You need not tell us what Lord Hamlet said. We heard it all. My lord, do as you please, but if you hold it fit, after the play, let his queen mother all alone entreat him to show his grief. Let her be round with him, and I'll be placed, so please you, in the ear of all their conference. If she find him not, to England send him, or confine him where your wisdom best shall think.
It shall be so. Madness in great ones must not unwatched go.
Okay, so Ophelia is just horribly grieved at the point that he's left, and she's thinking, she remembers whenever he used to speak with reason and logic, and he just said such wonderful and beautiful things. And to see him at this point, this would be grievous to her. So she just can't imagine what's happened to him, but he seems entirely mad to her. Well, the king and Polonius come out, And the king says, I don't think he's mad. I think he's really upset about something. And he's brooding on something. It feels a bit, dangerous. Like he's caught on an idea and can't get it out of his mind. What we ought to do is send him away to England on a diplomatic mission. And that will help him get his mind off of whatever it is that's bothering him. Of course, King Claudius is maybe thinking this because he's concerned that Prince Hamlet is maybe getting on to the idea that everything isn't as it should be with the death of the previous king. Polonius says, well, I disagree. I really think his madness is, all about love for Ophelia. But hey, why don't we set up an arrangement where he can talk to his queen mother after the play tonight, and then we can listen to what he says to her. Maybe he will reveal to his mother. He hasn't really gotten a chance to talk to her alone. Maybe he'll reveal to his mother what's going on. And then the king says, all right, that's not a terrible idea. I agree with that. And Polonius says he'll be there close to protect her just in case. And the king says, yeah, that's a good idea. He says, madness and great ones must not unwatched go. So you can't let the people who are going to be great, who are important to your country, you can't let them be crazy. If they're crazy, well, then maybe their role in your country's future needs to change, is what the king is thinking. Okay, so that is the end of Act 3, Scene 1, and that is the end of what you're reading for this week and working on, okay? And we'll read the rest of Act 3 and part of Act 4 next week. Okay, see ya.